you pulled for Black Swan, but you don't actually have a Kafka on your account, nor did you pull for a Kafka at all when the banner was out. And people have been telling you, oh, that is a stinky decision. Oh, you shouldn't do that. And even me, I made a video saying, yeah, this is a reason why you shouldn't summon for Black Swan if you don't have Kafka. But today I'm here to tell you, no Kafka, no problem. Because I have found 3 teams today that actually take use of Black Swan's ability, maybe not to the best of her ability, because I think Kafka does bring out the best of her ability. So that's the point of today's video. We'll be going over 3 team comps, one being a super free-to-play friendly team, I would say, to one being a Dr. Ratio team. Yeah, using her with Dr. Ratio, who would have thought it's good? Debuffs equal damage, you know? And then finally, a really wonky team that works in some scenarios, and you can mitch and max and swip and swap out stuff, but it's kind of hard to play. And this is a new concept for me, so if you enjoy videos like this, or you like this video, then leave a like on the video to let me know that you actually liked the video. Anyways, guys, let's go and hop into team comp number 1 now, which is the most free-to-play friendly team. Black Swan, Guinaifen, Ting Yun, and Fu Xuan. Now, Fu Xuan and Guinaifen are both replaceable units on this team, as well as Ting Yun as well, but we're going to talk about why Ting Yun's not as replaceable as the other 2 in a second here. So as far as Guinaifen goes, she can be swapped out for any dot character that you currently have on your roster. If you have Sampo, you can put Sampo in here. I would recommend E4 Sampo. If you have Luca, you can put Luca here, but I would recommend E6 Luca. And that's a very high investment cost for that Luca in a physical build. That is the build I recommend though, because it's hard to get a sub DPS and bring that damage forward, which is one of the main problems that Black Swan struggles with, is actually front loading damage. She doesn't do very much front loaded damage, and these characters allow her to bring damage back up to the front. Guinaifen does the same, but just with her ultimate, and she needs a very low Eidolon cost. So as far as Eidolons go for her or Guinaifen, you only really need E1 because it brings the effect resistance down by 10% to the enemies. E2 is also really big as well because it will be increasing the damage multiplier of the burn status by 40%, which means she's going to be doing more burn damage. The big thing about Guinaifen though, and these other characters, which we'll touch on in a second here, is first of all, her ultimate will reproc all the burn stacks on the enemy. And we all know whenever Black Swan uses her ultimate move, she'll be putting every type of dot on the enemy, meaning she gets a higher stack of burn to reproc on the enemy as well, which means you front load some of Black Swan's damage there as well. But next on our agenda here is going to be Mr. Katsuki Sampo, and Katsuki Sampo does need his E4, and why is that he needs his E4? Is because after 5 stacks of wind shear at E4, he'll be reprocking 8% of the current wind shear damage on the enemy, which can be really big because that is Black Swan's main source of damage without even using her ultimate. That means whenever you get these stacks up, each of those stacks count for wind shear, meaning these stacks will proc off and do huge damage. E6 does help out a lot as well because it will be increasing the damage multiplier of his talent by 15%, which basically does 15% extra damage for wind shear. And the final card on the table here, Mr. Luca. The reason I say you need Luca E6 is because whenever you use her ultimate, this will be reprocking off a really high amount of Luca's bleed damage, hopping into like our support here, which is Fu Xuan. Fu Xuan, not the best option here at all. This can be swapped out for Hua Hua or Locha or really any other sustain character you have. Hua Hua and Locha are going to be the best 2 options here. Hopping into Ting Yun, she could technically be swapped out for Ruan Mei, though I wouldn't recommend it. The reason I don't recommend it is because having Ting Yun on the team basically allows you to have almost an infinite uptime on Black Swan with her ultimate, especially if you have Hua Hua on the team with her as well. You practically have a 100% uptime on her ult, which keeps stacking up dot on the enemies, which means your other units are reprocking dots at a higher amount. And on top of that, she'll just keep exploding the enemies, increasing those stacks again, and just doing bigger and bigger damage every single time the enemy's turn rolls around. So I would recommend Ting Yun on the team here. Now, as far as how I have Black Swan built for this current team right now, I am using her signature light cone. This does bring out her most damage. I got her signature light cone. It's not necessary. If you don't have this light cone, then you can easily go for Eyes of Prey. This is a pretty simple option. You increase your effect hit rate and dot damage do deal. Now, of course, you're losing out on some defense shred there, quite a bit of defense shred when the ultimate's up. But yes, Eyes of Prey will definitely work as well if you want another scenario there. And I guess you could use the new free-to-play Pinacone light cone for Anhility if that is the only option you have available to you. Now, as far as how she's built on this team, I'm just using a 4-piece Prison of the Deep Confinement to really keep stacking up that defense shred that she provides. And I'm running the 2-piece Pan Cosmic. The only reason I'm running this is because I already had a decent set built out for when I built Sampo way back when it was called Pan Galactic in the game. Other sets you could run here, you could run Space Sealing Station, you could also run Glamoth as well. Either of these sets will work, you just need different requirements for each one. Actually, it's just speed, so you just need speed there. Stat-wise, stats should stay about the same. You always want to be hitting a 120 minimum on your effect hit rate at all times with your Black Swan. Just keep that in mind when building. You want a 120 minimum at all times for any build we talk about today. But with this team out of the way, and before we hop into our Dr. Ratio team, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you enjoy what you're seeing so far. If you enjoy this video concept of how I'm showing multiple different team comps, and showing how the team's built while showing just the gameplay of the team in the background so you can get your own feel for how you like a team or not. Anyways, guys, let's go ahead and hop into this Dr. Ratio Ratio team now. Now, as far as this team goes, I really don't like Ting Yun being used on this team too much. I really prefer Ruan Mei on this team just because it's easier to weakness break the enemies, and it went faster for me using Ruan Mei than it did using Ting Yun on this team. So with that being said, how do you build this team? How is this team completely built up, right? As far as how I ran my Black Swan on this team, I actually did switch over to the Glamour set, and the reason it is because I was using an energy regeneration rope with this Silver Wolf light cone. This is a free-to-play Silver Wolf light cone. If you haven't played the game since Silver Wolf released, then you wouldn't have this light cone. So I'm going to be offering another alternative here, but this is what I do prefer for this team, just so she has her ult time up. She has a really comfortable 3-turn ult using this combo. As long as she is sped up enough, then this should be fine as far as getting it on the enemy every single time they go, or just about every single time they go, or as many times as you would need to get it on the enemy as many times as they go. Weird complex wordplay there. I don't know what I did that for. Anyway, that's the basic premise of this team, right? Is I keep ulting on the enemy with her while your Doctor Ratio is spamming the damage, right? We're saving some skill points for her because we're doing single attacks most of the time, because her skill will be doing defense on the enemy for 3 turns, and she's going to be guaranteeing hitting this most of the time. But let me offer you another alternative to this if you don't want to play it the way that I just played it here. As the other alternative, just run the same build we mentioned before, using just either Eyes of Prey, her signature light cone, with just attack percentage on the rope. That's really the best thing you can do there. You could maybe run energy regen rope and pray to God you get hit a couple times, but that's a lot of RNG involved, and I don't really like that. But for the sake of this build, we will be talking about it using this particular set right now. But let's go ahead and hop into Dr. Ratio's build now. Dr. Ratio's build is going to be kind of interesting because he is running a 4-piece quantum set. Why? Because we have a lot of defense shred on this team. She's able to provide a pretty decent amount of defense shred. On top of this, we're getting a free 10% defense shred here. Not to mention Ruan Mei's ultimate ability to increase all type res penetration. So we're just getting a lot of like defense down and resistance penetration. If you have E1 Ruan Mei, this will work even better actually. Now, I will say Swan for me on this team actually does work a bit better than Hua or Locha, just because of the fact that I need the extra crit rate for my Dr. Ratio, because his crit rate is down in the dumps. It's 59% right now. It is okay. It's not the best thing you could have, but this team works out pretty well especially if you're facing off against enemies that have a, you know, imaginary weakness with maybe a wind sub weakness or something like that, or maybe a couple of enemies have a wind weakness as well. I think this could help out a lot. It'll provide some more damage for your Dr. Ratio, and I think you'll overall have a pretty good time with this team. Ruan Mei also increases that weakness break efficiency, and we all know how much weakness breaking potential Dr. Ratio has, how many follow-ups he can do. He's just a weakness breaking machine. This also helps out Black Swan as well to keep more uptime up on her ult, because her ult will last as long as the enemy doesn't get a turn, and we all know that Imaginary has the strongest weakness break potential in the game, especially when paired with Ruan Mei. On top of this, obviously, this is going to be keeping a lot of debuffs up for Mr. Dr. Ratio himself, and that's another reason why I like Black Swan a lot. She plays a lot of roles, right? She can play that role as like a sub Pela, right? So if you run into a situation where you're not facing ice weak enemies, you can run Black Swan on the team and get defense straight out as well. Anyways, guys, that's gonna do it for our little Dr. Ratio team. Now let's go ahead and hop into our next team, our final team on this list. But before we do, and I promise this is the last time I scam you, make sure you leave a comment down in the comment section down below. Tell me how I can improve these videos. This is a new type of video format for me, so any constructive criticism will help. Instead of just L plus ratio plus FU, you two can't see me. Anyways, let's go ahead and talk about this last team now. Now, this last team, it gets wild and wacky, let me tell you. Now, this team is basically combining the last 2 teams we just showed into one conglomerate team. What am I talking about? What the hell are you talking about, you two? Well, I'm talking about Black Swan, Dr. Ratio, Ruan Mei, and Luca. Yes, a wonky team that doesn't work in every scenario, but it can work in your favor in some scenarios. For this team right here, I am obviously running Dr. Ratio the same exact way as we were running him before. I can't get the words out of my mouth. I am running a full quantum set on him with a Glamour set. As far as Luca, we're running full break Luca, just absolutely breaking the hell out of the enemies with Luca, so we're able to get that bleed dot as high as possible. I am structuring this team around focusing breaking with Luca as much as humanly possible, just because he does so much break damage. On top of this, we're pairing this with Miss Black Swan, and what does Black Swan do? Obviously, she gives dot to the enemies, which means if you put an ultimate on the enemy, she'll be increasing the bleed dot that your E6 Luca would be reprocking. On top of this, she's also going to be defense shredding the enemies, which means your break damage just deals more damage in general. You get more bleed dot out. If you break an enemy with Dr. Ratio, they're getting pushed back further in the action order. Dr. Ratio is just staying tippy topped up with debuffs because there's always a debuff on the enemy. And of course, Ruan-Mei is here to help break the enemy shield, bring res penetration down, increase speed for the team, and just really help the break damage out for Luca in general. Yeah, Luca is E6. I'm running a Firmata light cone because I can't be bothered with buying the solitary healing light cone. So this could go up, obviously, if we ran that light cone instead of this light cone, but he actually can take use of this bottom ability here because with Black Swan being in play, there will always be wind shear on the enemy with her Arcana stack. So that means this always procs off with him on the team, right? Or at least that's how I read it anyways. Tell me if I'm wrong in the comment section down below. And as far as Black Swan's build here, it's just using her signature light cone here to get extra defense shred, and also just using the Pan Galactic here as well. I would recommend using the light cone because you want her doing as much damage when the enemy turn rolls around. But yeah, that's just how I have my Black Swan built. Obviously, Eyes of Prey will work here if you don't have this light cone. The reason why I say this team is kind of sketchy is because if you get into a scenario where this team gets attacked a couple of times, there is no healing, there is no saving yourself, there is no type of sustain on this team, so if you get attacked, you are pretty much dead. So the point of this team is just to break the enemy so fast and just keep them broken for so long and just continually break. Ruan-Mei re-break, just continually do that the whole match, so the enemy doesn't really have many chances to move. And obviously, your Luca can be swapped out for someone like a Sampo, someone like a Gwenithan, fit the elemental typing. And of course, this team only does work when the enemy is weak to imaginary as well. The enemy doesn't necessarily have to be weak to Black Swan's ability here, but I would recommend at least your sub dot unit and your doctor ratio are playing the same typing. Obviously, you don't want to go into a matchup when you're not facing any typings. This team will not work for you. And you just gotta be very, very smart with this team as well. I mean, if you're looking at the background footage for all these teams, I've been showing you the best way that I can play these teams, so maybe you can look at this background footage and kind of learn how to play these teams on your own, because this video would be way too long if I actually did a showcase of each one in between. So I just showed background footage of like me playing with these teams, and maybe you can get a good gist of how these teams play. And yeah, really, what story does this tell us at the end of the day? It tells us that Black Swan does not require Kafka to do good damage, right? While I do think Kafka brings out the most inner damage, it is not required for her to be on the team to actually do a decent amount of damage. And this shows here that she can fit into plenty of team comps without Kafka and either be that supporting role like Pela plays, or just be a dot character herself and inflict massive dot damage on the enemies. While it might be backloaded, it still works out pretty well at the end of the day. Anyways, guys, that's gonna do it for today's video. Bye.